Welcome, listener. You have found Women, Land, and Food. I'm Karen Brightly, and this is season 1 of a new podcast, sharing conversations I've had with women who have close connections to the land that sources every bite of food we eat every day of our lives. My hope for Women, Land, and Food is that these women's experiences hit your heart like bursts of energy the way they did mine. That's what happened to me as I dug into this idealized place called Vermont and started following my dream of owning and stewarding land and met our season 1 guests. Digging together into these women's stories, their hard work, their unique perspectives, and their rooted lives, we reconnect these two realities, food and land. And it turns out that really matters. And it's too good not to share. We hope it mirrors some stirring quest in your lives, too, and offers energy and inspiration to make some bite-sized change. Like, did you know that we, you, me, and all our sisters, control 93% of all the food dollars spent in this country? Turns out we have another superpower to save the world 3 times a day through stuff we already do: shopping, cooking, and eating. And then we hope that the podcast delivers some shared moments of peace and vibrancy, connecting with women whose grounded lives help us get more from the survival exercise we call eating. Their perspectives refresh our awareness that we're here to be fully nourished and to figure out what that means, and to help us put down our own deep roots and to grow our own deeply satisfying lives. Because now, maybe more than ever before, what we choose really matters for our bodies and souls, our families and communities, and for our shared home on this planet. Welcome to Women, Land, and Food. In today's episode, we're connecting with Chiara Hollender, a woman who has shaped my life and work far more than she knows. Chiara and I met just before COVID began in earnest in the U.S. A mutual friend introduced us because Chiara, after working for a production company in New York City, was interested in fundraising and finance to launch her work in film. And as much as I was eager to support her work, when we really connected, it was much more about the intersectionality of women's lives with what happens on land, especially farming and food. She was deep in the work when I was just starting, and she kind of schooled me. One of the first books she recommended is All We Can Save by Ariana Elizabeth Johnson and Catherine K. Wilkinson. These women share courage, wisdom, and tools to face and understand all that's so daunting in our climate crisis and keep working for all that's still possible. Getting into that book helped me understand Chiara's motivation and commitment. While Chiara's wisdom and generosity originally inspired me, I found an incredible convergence when we reconnected a few months ago. Chiara has taken off in a fascinating direction. She has produced a series of short documentaries for PBS Digital, a platform that is an important bridge into the future. Her series is called Women of the Earth, and you can find links and descriptions on her page on our site. And we'll talk a lot about Chiara's work today. But even more compelling is this woman herself. Chiara, welcome to Women, Land, and Food. Let's take the deep dive into your life and work.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks, Karen.
So I'm going to ask you to talk about the shaping influences of growing up in Vermont. You were the daughter of a successful businessman and a deeply family-oriented mom in a fairly idyllic Vermont small town during the school year, and then spending summers with extended multi-generational family. What did that do for you? How did that ground you to start your life?
Yeah, growing up in Vermont was one of the biggest gifts that I've been given thus far, as well as growing up in an extremely loving household with very different parents who taught me very different things about how to go about in the world. Every time I move away from Vermont, I move back. And
how many times has that been so far?
I think 3 or 4.
Wow.
And yeah, I'll leave and go to New York City and come back, leave and go to Boston, come back. 2 years ago, I just bought a house and am hoping to remain here for an extended period of time now. But I don't think as a young person, I really understood the gifts of growing up on the land. And when I say growing up on the land, I mean like shoes off, running through the woods at recess.
Tell me about your basement moment in the city.
Yeah. I lived in Williamsburg, right after, or maybe a year or two out of college, and I would walk to the Whole Foods in Williamsburg and go down like a very steep escalator, and then like the whole supermarket unfolded, and it was like in this dark basement with no windows, and I'm like sifting through the produce and not knowing where the food came from and not really being able to see the outdoors where the food was being grown. And there, honestly, in an indescribable way, I just kind of had a meltdown. There was a disconnect that felt really uncomfortable for me. And I think I finally started to ask myself if the life that I was living was really the one that I wanted to live, and if it really made me happy, which, truth be told, it really wasn't making me happy.
Okay, so I found the story compelling when you first shared it, and now hearing the word meltdown, like how did that present itself in the supermarket? Like, did you throw tomatoes at the wall, or was it an internal experience? Like, what did it feel like in that moment?
It felt like I needed to start taking real actionable steps towards changing my life.
I think it's really, really hard for most people to have an experience and realize it at the same moment.
So I'll also say there were other things going on at the time. I was working at a production company led by an individual who I absolutely love and adore. But most of the people at the production company were lots of older white men. I was like 22, 23. I had no idea what I was doing. But I was figuring it out at this production company working as a producer. And I just was treated like garbage and super undervalued, which made me undervalue myself. And it was this whole thing of like, I'm working this job, which I thought was going to make me really excited and happy. And in the beginning it did. But working through the experience, I felt, a little taken advantage of and not treated well. And I don't know, maybe the sad basement and the sad produce in the basement like reminded me of myself. I just felt so disconnected and so like, how did I get here?
So I think what I'm wondering is if you hadn't grown up in Vermont, if you hadn't spent so much time on land, or I don't know that anyone I've talked to has the expectation of being able to look outside of the store and see the food growing, right? That's an incredibly beautiful and rare thing that was just completely normalized in you, it sounds like.
I mean, it's a privilege to have access to land. Not only did my parents own the land and the home that I grew up on.
How many acres did you grow up on?
Ooh, that's a good question. Probably around 5.
Nice.
But, owning land and owning a home, that's not the way that everybody grows up. And that's a huge privilege to be able to come home from school and spend as much time as I want outside. Also spending a lot of time outside in my school environment as well. That taught me that the earth is a teacher and the earth has value, and connecting to the earth in that way, even when I wouldn't have said that to you as a kid.
Sure, you didn't have contrast then.
Right. And I didn't have an understanding about how valuable the earth is and how many gifts and lessons that it has to give. But growing up in that way, I was able to connect with land, in a way that felt almost spiritual. Yeah, I just have a deep appreciation for Vermont's landscape. And I think in turn, it's made me want to take care of it because it's taking care of me.
So it's a reciprocal relationship.
Yeah, striving to be.
You recently bought a home. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I recently bought a home in Charlotte, Vermont, which is in the town I grew up in, which is very funny to tell people that because they have all sorts of different reactions, some of which being, why the hell would you ever want to live in your small hometown in Vermont?
But if you've been to Charlotte, you get it.
Yeah.
You told me when we first chatted that you would spend the school year here and then summers with your big family.
Yeah. So from as early as I can remember, spent all year in Vermont. And then when we came to like end of May, June, and school let out, I would drive with my whole immediate family to Long Island to my grandparents' house. My grandfather and grandmother grew up their whole lives in Tehran and immigrated here when my mom was pretty young. And we spent the summers, my 5-person immediate family, my aunt and uncle and their 3 kids, so that's 10, plus my other uncle, that's 11, plus my grandparents, 12, 13. And we spent the whole summer together under one roof. And, you know, we've really moved away from that in modern times.
We're like pretty age segregated.
Yeah. And this emphasis on the nuclear family. So being able to have the influences of other adults and people and kids, you know, the way my aunt raised her kids was not the same as the way my mom raised us, right? So being around her also taught me a lot of new things and gave me some super different perspectives that, again, I really appreciate.
Watching your uncles be brothers must have been hilarious.
Totally. And, you know, the power struggle between, you know, I'm growing up being like, my mom knows everything. And then she's getting schooled by her Persian mom who knows everything, right? Like super strong personalities, especially the women. And yeah, growing up, being able to have access to like my grandmother cooking Persian food.
I was hoping we were going to get to that. One of our jokes on the podcast is describe the food slowly and in great detail.
Oh my gosh, so much to say. And again, I don't remember thinking so fondly of it as a kid, and not to immediately go here, but you know, there was plenty of time that I spent wishing I had a white grandmother who, you know, baked sugar cookies and wore an apron and remembered all my friends' names.
And looked like Mrs. Claus.
Exactly. My grandmother, Etty, was not that. And as an adult, I'm so grateful for that. Her love language was food. She was great at cooking food. Something that I've inherited from her is that feeding other people is the way that she shows them that she loves them and she cares about them, even past the point of full, but like continuing to feed them and have food around.
Okay, but talk about the food.
Yeah. So one of the things that she used to make every morning is she would boil eggs to make hard-boiled eggs, but with onion skins in the water, which gave the eggs this like, oh my God, I still crave it to this day. Gave the eggs this like incredible aroma and flavor that sounds really simple, but was actually amazing. And
that sounds kind of doable. Was there any other ingredient, or did she have a knack or like a?
It's one of those things where it's like you try to do it and it's just never the same. You know,
there's something she didn't tell you.
I'm sure there's lots of things she didn't tell me. And then always rice and tadik, which means bottom of the pot, which you either put like sliced potatoes at the bottom of the pot or pita bread at the bottom of the pot, or just like stacking the rice super thick at the bottom of the pot. And then when you flip it over, there's like this crispy top to the rice, always with a lot of saffron and other spices. And then she made khoresht, which is just Persian stew. Meat and vegetables, lots of greens. My favorite stew was like a tomato stew. So she would cut up beef, lots of tomatoes, green beans, dried limes, and lima beans. A huge thing in Persian cooking is like this balance between sour and savory. So always this like uplift of sour with something like a sour lime. Growing up in Vermont, unless my mom was cooking Persian food, that is not something I had access to. So even though I would eat it sometimes at home and oftentimes during the summer, it still is so special to me. I cook a little bit of Persian food, but if I'm in a city and I can get Persian food, that's like the number one thing that I want to do, because my grandmother can no longer cook, and food is my number one access to my ancestors and my Persian culture. I've never been to the country. I don't speak the language, but food feels like the most accessible way that I can.
That makes so much sense. Not only the deliciousness, my daughter had a very close friend who is Persian as well. And if the girls ever had a choice about where to eat, it was there. And as much the familial context and the big group of people sitting around for the meal as the meal itself, but it was the meal. And the other thing is, it seems like it kind of echoes in the childhood formation way that you were being brought into yourself as you were being formed into who you are. And it's interesting that it was so separate.
Yeah.
Like there was a Vermont portion and a Long Island, basically Persian way of doing that. So what was putting the pieces together like for you? These pieces of yourself?
Oh, I'm still putting the pieces together, really.
Was there a moment or a dawning or a recognition at some point that you had a lot of pieces that you got to put together? That you were more than white?
No, it wasn't one moment. It like continues to be this like peeling back the layers of an onion, like truly still to this day. I think there's so much that I haven't explored or I've been afraid to explore. When you have a parent who's an immigrant, there is so much assimilation that goes on for them, like for my mom and her siblings and her parents, and then the ripple effects through the generations that like continues to be felt. And I'm continuing, every day to understand why my mom is the way she is, why my grandmother is and was the way that she is and was.
Mm-hmm.
I say was because she's old now and kind of half in this life, half in
the next.
Yeah. But it's a beautiful, complicated, emotion-filled process for me. I mean, I feel things very big and very deeply, and understanding who you are and who your family is for me not a moment or a documentary or a book. It's really a lifetime of understanding.
That makes sense to me. I grew up in Miami, and so many of my friends were either immigrants themselves or first generation. And sometimes their parents didn't have any English. So even as young as 4 or 5, they would be going to immigration offices and helping fill out paperwork and explaining things, translating things, legal matters that were of great significance, and being that bridge between not just generations, but cultures and that process of assimilation. So it makes sense that your mom's life was complex, that she had reached backward into older generations in ways that a lot of kids aren't ever asked to do.
Yeah.
As will become clear in later episodes, I really love our bank. Mascoma Bank was one of the first great discoveries we made when we moved to Vermont. Mascoma is a community bank supporting local businesses, nonprofit organizations, and customers around Vermont and New Hampshire. From everyday checking and savings products to mortgages and commercial lending, Mascoma Bank helps community members navigate all their financial challenges. They are also serious about personal engagement. You walk into a branch and they know your name. It's the type of customer service that we know and expect in northern New England, and they deliver. I'm proud and grateful that Mascoma Bank is supporting the inaugural season of Women, Land, and Food. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. Wendell Berry wisely said, "Earth is what we all have in common." Solidarity of Unbridled Labor practices strategic brand design internationally to cultivate differentiation, promote cultural relevance, and grow meaningful ideas by design. Solidarity has been inspired by the work of their close friend and creative partner, producer-director Chiara Hollender, and her PBS documentary series, Women of the Earth. So Solidarity proudly agreed to sponsor our episode with Chiara and the vision we all share for restoring our connection to land through these stories of women, their joy, and their dedication to grow meaningful cultural change from the ground up. Okay, and then school. You went to Ithaca and then on to New York.
Yeah, I came to this reckoning that I wanted to be or was an artist. And that was like first expressed through music and dance and then theater, which is what I ultimately went to college for. And loved it, followed many different paths, started writing a lot, ultimately started directing, which led me to New York. I worked off Broadway for a while, and then I actually moved back to Vermont to direct a play at Stowe Theater Guild in Stowe, Vermont, which was incredibly fun and taught me a lot about where I saw my path unfolding in theater and in art in general.
And what was it about that was so compelling for you?
I've just always loved telling stories and telling stories like with groups of people. Something that is so fun about the theater is no rehearsal is the same, no performance is the same, no two plays are the same. You can cast different people in the same role and the role will become different inherently. No two audiences are the same. So there's something living and breathing and moving about live theater that I've never got over. I don't think I'll ever get over.
That's why the phrase "I have tickets" can get you out of any meeting.
It's not a singular art form. It's an art form that is made in community as a group. And I love that.
Well, we're back to the reciprocity, right? So why was it worth leaving theater and moving into film?
Big picture, I knew in my heart of hearts that I couldn't really do what I wanted to do in theater unless I lived in a big city that had a big theater scene. And deep down, I knew that was not the place for me, was to like live in a big city and, you know, spend my nights at a theater. As I moved deeper into myself, I'm a slower moving person at times. I prefer the mornings to the evenings. I need to spend time outside. And it didn't feel like my relationship to land and my relationship to the outdoors necessarily had a place like in the quote unquote theater scene in New York. And when I moved, kind of randomly fell into film, it felt like there were more options to make art that felt important to me through film than through theater.
That matched the ways you wanted to live and be on this planet.
Yeah. I think at its very core, I am somebody who wants to tell stories, and that felt like a story that I wanted to explore. I'm not the person who's necessarily growing the food. I mean, I've worked on farms and I've had garden plots, but as somebody who is a storyteller and a filmmaker and an artist, that feels like where my gift lies. So telling those stories is where I found myself.
Right. You're that person, so that will source the stories you tell. You have a PBS Digital series out called Women of the Earth. How did you get going? How did this come about?
Yeah, so Women of the Earth is a short-form, unhosted documentary series which highlights women's contributions to climate healing and climate science within communities across the United States. I started off by making 2 short films about women and their relationship to land. One I filmed in upstate New York, and the other one I filmed on the San Carlos Reservation in Arizona.
And that's when we met, when you were getting ready to do all of this.
Yeah. And the first one I just did, super on the cheap with my friends. I used money that I had made at the production company to fund the making of the film. And then the second film I made also independently, I just did a Kickstarter campaign and raised enough money to go out and shoot and edit it. But I knew of digital studios, and I actually saw one of the producers had posted in a female film Facebook group saying that they were looking for new series to get female audiences excited about food and climate change. And I was like, oh, well, I have the perfect series. And I had already made 2 episodes. And so I basically emailed her different updated versions of the deck for like 2 years. And then all of the stars aligned and she responded and was like, great, I think this is a perfect idea. Like, how soon can we make it? And I think we started filming a month later.
Whoa.
Which is like,
when it's time, it's time.
Very hurry up and wait. Yeah, we quickly moved into solidifying the idea that we really wanted to document women's contributions to climate healing and climate science within communities across the United States. And because of my interest in food and cooking and working on farms and like my access to land as a young person, I really focused on farming and agriculture in the first season. We made 4 episodes altogether. And now as we're looking ahead to the second season, we're broadening our horizons to thinking about how women are addressing problems created by climate change as a whole. So thinking about fire and water in addition to soil and animals and lots of other things. And we start filming really soon. So the first episode of the second season will drop on July 31st, and you can watch the whole first season already through the PBS app or on YouTube.
I did want to ask if there were like role models or inspiration, or does this really come from a childhood, emerging adulthood experience and an internal conversation? Like, did you take courses in college? Did you read things? Did you meet people? Like, what were there external influences as well?
So much of the work that I do now is to share stories that I wish I had been shown and had access to as a young person, but didn't. I don't know if that's because they didn't exist or if because I was just not having access to them or being shown them, but there is a lack of role models, diverse female role models in the climate and food space. And something that I like to ask young kids is like, if you close your eyes and describe a farmer or a land steward, what are the words you would choose? And it's basically always the same, like guy, tractor, overalls. That's about it. And I think I would probably have the same answer, at least well into my teens, even though there are female farmers in Vermont for sure. That's just the image that I think we've been fed time and time again. And as I started to explore the landscape of the United States and who's really growing our food and who's thinking of innovative solutions, as you said, who's buying the food and cooking the food and serving the food, that's not the image. So why is that still what we think about? And what do we need to do for young kids to imagine something different?
So this is beautiful, because the next question I was going to ask you is, what about women in this system or sphere compelled you to center your work there? And what I'm hearing you say is it was the absence of women that made you continue your migration this direction.
Yeah, there was an absence of women. And also, I started to think about, why don't I see myself in this space, right? Like there was no part of me as a young person that thought I could be a farmer or I can be a climate scientist. Like that was not a path that I thought was for me. And I think that there's a strategic reason by media and culture in general why I did not think that that was for me. It's because I did not see people who looked like me represented in those spaces, right? And on top of that, the first thing I started doing was just having conversations with people. I talk to a lot of women who work in the space. Like that is most of what I do. Sometimes I get really lucky and I can go actually like film them doing what they do. But a lot of it is conversations. And everybody I talk to is the most badass, smartest, most inspiring. I can't stop these conversations because they're the conversations that really keep me going and give me hope. And I think at its core, I just felt if these women are inspiring me and changing me just in like a 30-minute or hour-long conversation, like sitting on their porch or on Zoom, there are other people who will feel this way when they hear these women talk and share their stories. So let's listen to them
get
talk.
them there. So how did you research your subjects? Like, how did you find them as we're digging now into your work?
I first started with friends of friends, right? Just like who I saw and kind of had access to, and would just ask if I could come visit them or drive to a different part of Vermont and start talking with them. A lot of it is also just like poking around online, reading articles, looking at people's Instagrams. Although I will say a lot of the people that I've featured in my work and collaborate with don't actually have a huge online presence. And that's like part of this work too.
Because they're busy farming.
Yeah, because they're super busy. And it's also important to me that if someone's already had a ton of media coverage and a bunch of documentaries made about them and an Instagram following with thousands of people, maybe I should spend my time looking for somebody who hasn't been kind of in the spotlight yet and their voice hasn't been shared yet. Because as somebody who makes media in a landscape that has so much media, I have to also constantly check myself about what I'm creating and if what I'm adding to the noise is useful and important and not the same as what already exists.
Right. And you are really broadening horizons, which is so exciting. Okay, so the first season is 4.
Mm-hmm.
Second season is 7.
Yeah.
Okay, for the first 4, give me like a sentence or two about who they are.
I mean, these are a mix of farmers and land stewards, but also climate scientists.
Just by virtue of the fact that they're affecting the climate by their work, right?
Yeah, and also some of them have crazy cool degrees in whatever they're doing. One of the most important things to this series is that they are addressing problems that exist in their communities, and also that they directly work with the land most days. There's tons of people doing really cool work in the climate space and in food and ag who might not actually work with the land, but the relationship between person and land is something that we're really trying to get after in this series.
So can you name them?
Yeah.
The first 4, and give me a sentence or two about each of them.
Yeah. So the first woman we featured was Shannon Waldron. She's a shepherdess out in California. She does a lot of really cool stuff, but mostly she grazes her sheep for like fire mitigation. And also just in general, grazing is really good for the landscape if you're doing it well and rotationally grazing and treating your animals well and all that stuff. So she's out in California. The second episode is about Melanie and Freya Dobson, who work on a hemp farm in upstate New York, working to remediate the damage that was done to the soil by previous owners with hemp.
Wait, the damage that was done, was that just agrochem?
Yeah, it was, the land was just like horribly mistreated with a lot of monocropping before they came onto the land and started this project. So at the time when I was filming with them, they were just planting help for remediation purposes. They weren't really even doing anything else with it because it was very early days. The third person we filmed was Michelle Week of Hosquiat Good Rain Farm outside of Portland, Oregon. And she is an indigenous farmer who saves microclimately adapt seeds to her bioregion to continue to feed her community through a CSA, even in the midst of climate chaos, while also growing indigenous foods for her indigenous communities that live in her area. And then the fourth person we filmed was Yemi Amu, who owns Oko Farms in Brooklyn. And it's a urban aquaponics farms that recycles fish and water in like an ongoing system. To
like
provide,
a closed loop system,
yeah,
right?
Closed loop system. I hadn't spent any time around aquaponics folks before. She's so brilliant. And she also does it right in the city. And having people in a city environment having access to that kind of food and farm, even people like looking through the gate, I think that that's really, really important for city folks to be able to actually see food growing and knowing that that's a possibility in urban areas.
Yeah, especially for the kids who've been reported to think that spaghetti grows on trees. And like just some of the conversations I've had with educators around food and what children think.
Yeah. And I mean, the amount of times that she's gotten like, you're a Black female farmer in Brooklyn? Like, what?
And put that together for me?
Yeah. She's like, yeah. And I want to grow stuff that nobody else is growing. And I want to figure out problems that nobody else is addressing. And she's badass. But yeah.
She's very cool. I watched all 4 of them, and it made me realize that you probably have the same experience I do. Like every time we go in to edit and I re-listen to these conversations with these, including you, brilliant women, I'm just like, this one's my favorite. I can't wait for everybody to hear this one.
And they all have taught me totally different and equally important things. Like that's really my favorite part. I'll say everything's my favorite part, but really my favorite part about getting to do this work is not only being gifted stories by women, but getting the chance to learn from them and spend time with them, like on their farms, which, by the way, none of these women own the land that they work on, which I think is so important because
that's a big thing to say.
The reverence and the love that these women have for the land that they do not own is one of the most beautiful things to watch. They don't care for it because they own it. They care for it because they care and they see the value and they feel their own responsibility to give back to the land in the way that it gives to them. It was not even purposeful in this first season that I went about.
That wasn't one of your criteria.
Not one of my criteria at all. And it wasn't even until we were filming the 4th episode that I was like, oh, wow, none of these women own the land that they work. And that's mind-blowing to me. Not mind-blowing that they don't own the land, but mind-blowing to see how deep their care is for the land and the fact that they don't own it.
And by virtue of that, then they're giving a gift to all of us to offer these healing practices to the land.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, the issue of land ownership in the U.S. is also, maybe a whole different conversation, but it is a barrier that so many people face, especially women, and watching these women move through the world and overcome those barriers because they feel so strongly about their work and about the land is, I think, a lesson to us all.
Yeah, and part of what's so inspirational. Do you want to tease next season?
Yeah. 7 episodes across the United States. Really excited to film more in New England, which is not something I've done a whole lot of, but definitely trying to focus on Maine and Vermont and maybe New Hampshire. Everybody will still be women who work with the land, highlight women's contributions to climate healing and climate science, but not just food, but thinking about how are we healing soil post fires? How are we dealing with microplastics in our ocean? How are we returning buffalo to native landscapes, right? So thinking bigger picture about our interactions with land.
Chiara, go back to the barriers of entry for young farmers, particularly women. Like, what's in the way?
I mean, cost, I think, is the biggest barrier, as well as for people of color. So much land in the U.S. is inherited, right? So if you don't come from a family that already owns land, the barriers to you then owning it is exponentially more difficult. So yeah, cost, family access and inheritance. And I also don't feel like it's something there is a business to owning land and getting loans and working the land and taking care of it, right? And
so much of that has been consolidated that there's not that much land family owned now as there was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
For anybody.
And, there's also no criteria when you go to buy land of like, are you going to treat this land well? And are you going to care for it? I also just don't think we value equality, in the way that I believe that we should. Like, there are people in powerful positions who don't want women to own land, who don't care how well we're taking care of our land, right? And so there's barriers that are already in place and have been in place for a long time, but there's also so many people in power who don't want to dismantle those barriers. So not to be grim, but I don't exactly know the best way forward. All I know is that I meet women every day who refuse to let those barriers stop them from doing the work that matters to them.
That's so cool. I'm glad you're finding them and helping us know about their stories.
Yeah, it's a huge gift.
The whole point of talking to you is your work speaks for itself. I think the story you have to tell about your relationship with land and the reciprocity that sourced you as a human being and clarified your process, like it's sort of the same value. Like we need to hear from you.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. The next question is sort of in two parts. I'm curious about what the audience response has been. That's the first part of the question. The second part is, how has your work changed you?
Yeah. So for this sector of PBS, this is PBS Digital Studios. And within that, it's on a platform called PBS Terra, which is a science-specific platform. And for PBS Digital at the time in 2022, 2023, they were specifically looking to build a larger, more diverse female audience. That is not something that they typically have access to. 75% of their viewership are men.
Whoa.
Huge number. And this is
say that out loud again?
Yeah. And this is not PBS broadcast TV. This is PBS Digital Studios, meant for younger audiences, is 75% men across all their channels. And so the reason why they greenlit this series, besides the fact that it was a fantastic idea, if I do say so myself, is that they were looking to increase their female viewership and also get a more diverse female audience. And so in the first 4 episodes, I bumped that audience viewership up by 12%.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I mean, my goal in the next 7 episodes in the second season is to create a more equal split or even get more women viewers than men. So
Gina once said, we'll settle for half.
Yeah, I mean, look, if half is what it is, half is cool. I was really excited to see the viewership go up by 12% just over 4 episodes. That felt like a huge win for me. But you know, as we all know, change takes time. Audience building takes time. Building trust with your audience takes time. And the coolest thing about YouTube is in this shorter format type platform is you have this direct source to your audience. Like people are writing comments about how they feel and what they liked and what they didn't like and what resonated for them. And while this is a science show in a way at its core, I'd say 95% of the comments were having to do with how inspiring these women are, how they want to show this to their daughters to inspire their little ones, how they had no idea women did this work or hold this knowledge. And for me, that's part of why I do this work.
Yeah. Wow. So has it changed you?
The biggest thing about this work that has changed me is being a director and producer for fiction or nonfiction, whatever you're making. I oftentimes find myself like at the head of a team, leading the head of the charge, deciding who we're going to feature, deciding how we're going to film, right? There's like a lot of decisions, even before we move into a deep collaboration on set with everybody who's working together. There's a lot of decisions that have to be made. And I have learned a lot about the way in which it's important to go about building trust with the people whose stories we're telling. That reciprocal relationship is perhaps the most important when you are asking somebody to share their story with you and give you a gift that then you're going to bring to a larger audience. So many of the women that I've worked with have little trust in media. You know, people will come to write an article about them and take some photos or make a film about them, and then they'll watch the thing back or they'll read the article back and they're like, I don't I don't see myself in this. The person had a predetermined idea of who I was and what the story was, and they came in and they told that story and they took it from me and they left, and that's not even me. And so what I work really hard to do is lots of pre-interviews, lots of trust building, lots of getting to know the person and really co-creating what the story is going to be with them. Yeah, the story, there has to be a big story arc, right? There has to be a title of the episode. All of those things have to happen. PBS has to sign off on them, but I can't just bring them out of thin air. It's my job as a director and producer to work with the women, to co-collaborate with them and co-create with them. And that's incredibly humbling.
Yeah, because you're new to their story and they've lived it their whole lives.
Absolutely. It's not lost on me how big of a gift and also how big of a responsibility that is.
I kind of want to stay with this one for just a second. Like, how are you a different person now, having done this? Obviously, more sophisticated, deeper in, more integrated, like all those things. But has there been any kind of shift for you? Are you more angry about anything? Are you more hopeful? Are you more energized?
You know, I would say that I'm much more grounded, because spending time with women who at times face more adversity than I do and have bigger hurdles to jump and barriers in front of them, yet continue to push forward anyways, even if I was them, like maybe I would have given up by now. That grounds me in a way that I didn't used to have. Maybe one of the biggest things that I've learned from these women and that's changed me is having patience and being okay with the unknown. You know, they deal, as you just said, like dealing with so many factors having to do with the weather, administrative changes, maybe a seed that they planted last year, the climate has now changed and shifted and won't grow this year, but the people in their CSA are really expecting it, or it's a really lucrative crop for them. Now they're missing out on that, right? A flood comes and it wipes away all of the stuff that they've planted. And I've just never seen any of these women give up. It's having patience and waiting and finding new solutions, even if it takes a really long time, before throwing in the towel. And as somebody who puts a lot of pressure on myself, especially in my art and especially when I'm collaborating with other people because I want to get it right so badly, I've learned patience from them and having grace for myself in circumstances from watching them work and watching them go about the world.
When you first said patience, I'm like, yeah, we're moving on. It is just a profound gift to be able to take time. It's one, the values of efficiency often just take off the table, but they're essential to food and growing and also to being human.
Yeah. And, you know, urgency and time is money and all of that stuff, that's also like a patriarchal idea that we are forced to work inside of. And I think it's worthwhile to question that. I often find myself in a rush and on to the next thing, and my to-do list is really long, and I can't go out and take a walk or make a meal, you know, but then you step back and you know the value of those things, because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of other people and you can't take care of the land. I just saw this really, really great conversation that Glennon Doyle and Abby Wambach were having. They were giving a talk at the GLAAD Awards in California, and something they touched upon, which really touched me, was that the people in power want us to be scared and want us to give up and throw in the towel. They want us to not sparkle and not be our full selves. Because if we challenge that, there's power in challenging that. There is power in not giving up. And I feel like we're constantly being given signs to give up and to quiet ourselves and to shrink ourselves and be smaller. I spent a lot of time as a young kid feeling like I had to be smaller, and I'm done with that.
So this is a fun one for me because unlike me and many of our guests, you've got more in front of you than behind you. And I love that for you. I love that for the world. And in the face of so much change, like, what are you aspiring to? What are you inspired by? Like, what's fueling you? What are you looking forward to? Whether that's the series or your life or your new house and your own food production, which I need you to talk a little bit about, the food that you're anticipating. But like, what's ahead? What's ahead for the Chiara story?
I love this question because, as some of you know, when you're in pre-production for a project, it's like your whole damn life. And so I feel like my brain is only thinking about creating these 7 episodes and putting them out into the world and everything that comes along with that. But I appreciate this question because taking the time to think past that is really important.
You can pick your head up and breathe for a second. Also, there's no wrong answer because nothing you say right now is ever actually specifically going to happen, right?
Yeah. As I said, I moved back to Vermont to be much more rooted in this place about almost 2 years ago, and continuing to root, whether that be starting my garden this summer, which is something I've always wanted to do.
And do your sidebar and radishes now?
Oh my God. Yeah. I've become like obsessed and addicted to radishes. I don't know why, but at first I thought that they were always spicy, which is not necessarily the case. And oh my gosh, the crunch, the like wateriness of them, the color, there's something that I just am totally enamored with and obsessed with about radishes right now. So I will be planting radishes.
Have you decided how many varieties?
I think maybe just 2 or 3. I'm trying to not get ahead of myself with the garden this year.
You've learned from the farmers.
Yeah. Trying to prep the garden really well and double dig my beds and then see where it takes me. Lettuces, tomatoes, radishes, and herbs is where I'm starting. And then I want to plant a whole bunch of flowers because I love flowers in my house and outside. I think the thing that I will say, and maybe it'll come to fruition, is allowing myself as a person to change and grow, and also allowing my art to change and grow. I made the first episode of Women of the Earth, which at that time I didn't know it was going to become this whole series with PBS. I ideated that in 2018 and filmed it in 2019. So it's been a long journey of these stories, and I'm really excited to see how I can open this up into other art forms and other ways of exploring both my relationship to my culture, my relationship to food, my relationship to land, as well as continuing to explore women's relationship to land in general.
So a radishes episode in France with butter is what I'm seeing.
Absolutely. I'll grow some radishes and have you over, and we can put butter and salt on them and have a great time.
Good day. In the middle of all of this change, and I know we kind of glossed over funding of future episodes because of the chaos and that there's no way to know any of that. And it's not yours to talk about the whole universe of PBS. But what's getting you through? What's giving you hope? What's keeping you going?
Yeah.
How do you say, no, I'm going to believe something else. I'm going to act on and choose and invest my life in another way. And do you have any role models in this?
Where I start to feel fear is that working with PBS has given me access to a massive audience that maybe would have access to otherwise. But what I am reminding myself of is you can make small projects and do small acts of good and have small conversations. And even if there's not a huge budget or a ton of funding or a big platform to put it out on, that shouldn't stop me from continuing to have these conversations and continuing to create things that feel important. And I've almost not let my mind go there because it's such a scary thought, right? And what if some of these platforms that I love and have provided me so much like cease to exist? But then I'm reminded that things like that have happened before, and you just create new pathways forward, right? You like lay the brick and put down new foundation and create paths where there weren't any in the past. And that's a scary thought, but it's also humbling because, again, the lessons that I've learned is maybe you pause and you have patience and you decide how kind of to rebuild and move forward, and then you just figure it out. And you might go down many dead ends before you find a path that's like long enough to take you to where you want to go. But I still think that it's time well spent trying. And I mean, that's like the foundation of this whole series, right? Is like climate change and food and agriculture, and the future of that is big and complex and unknown. And if we only try to solve the problems with the tools that we already have or know exist, that's not going to get us to where we need to go, right? We need like varied, diverse approaches and innovative approaches to solve problems that we haven't been faced with before, and listening to the people who are working to innovate. I'm about to work with a woman right now who has spent years trying to create alternative ways to harvest oysters to not use plastics because she's done adding plastics to the ocean. She's also a microplastics researcher. And so much of what she tells me is trial and error and trial and error and trial and error and trial and error. That's not stopping her. She's just trying something new. Every day, she's trying something new. She's working with something new. Every season, she's like pulling up what she needs to out of the ocean and saying, did this work? I don't know. Maybe it didn't work. I'll try something new next time. I'll get more funding. I'll figure it out.
Brene Brown at her first TED Talk was saying that she thought it should be called the failure conference. I think she said that in her speech. She's like, we're here to celebrate all these people who did these amazing things, but they all tell us that they failed 37 times before they found the one that worked.
Mm.
So I think that willingness to take on the risk of failure and keep going.
Yeah. Something Lucille Contreras, who's one of the women I'm featuring in the next season, the other day she hit me with like, so much of her funding is drying up and all of the grants that she's working with, it's been a really hard time for her and her organization. And what she was like, you know what? I know though that true wealth is in knowledge, and nobody can take away my knowledge. Nobody can take away the knowledge of my community. And staying steadfast in that belief and really holding on to that knowledge and making sure it doesn't go away and it's not dismantled, that gave me hope.
It's the equivalent of seed saving, right?
Yeah.
Well, Chiara, I think we should turn to our rapid wrap-up. You ready to get a bunch of questions fired at you?
Let's do it.
Okay. How do you describe family right now?
So precious. So that's not your questions.
Where did the precious come from? What were you thinking of? Who were you thinking of?
I have newly a niece and nephew in the past few years, and that's really changed me. It's really changed my relationship and my understanding of my sister and our relationship to each other, which has not always been as beautiful and close as it is right now. And it's being with children just teaches you things. And I don't get to see them as much as I would like to. And so the time that I do see them and the time that I do get to spend with them is so precious. So that's where that came from. That's not rapid fire, but
good enough. What most prepared you for your current work and how hard this life would be? Hard/beautiful.
Watching my mom grow and change over my life, she has become incredibly strong and very steadfast in her values and like what she'll allow into her life. And watching her grow and change over time has inspired a lot of me in the way that I move through the world.
What do you dream for yourself in the world? This is our Miss America question. You can wave.
I dream that everybody has the access to the life that makes them happy and makes their soul happy.
That's beautiful. That'll get you the crown. If someone wanted to know more about what we talked about today, what Google terms should they search?
I've been thinking a lot about gift economies because of Robin Wall Kimmerer's new book, The Service Berry. Also, the writing of Barbara Kingsolver. Her storytelling has, profoundly changed me and the way that I tell stories. And recognizing that so much of myself and my work is standing on the shoulders of women that came before me. And Barbara Kingsolver's book, Flight Behavior, touches really beautifully on the life of a rural woman and her coming into herself and what she values and what's important to her. And as I said earlier in this conversation, spending time with other women, spending time in other women's stories has really taught me so much about myself. And the way that Barbara deeply roots you into the lives of other women who have experiences that are so different than my own has just taught me so much. And also the work of Toni Morrison.
Barbara Kingsolver did a nonfiction book, Animal Vegetable Miracle. And I'm going to see who I have to beg to see if she'll come on and talk. And now she's won a Pulitzer for her most recent work. And I would want her to talk about a piece she did years ago, where I am on the trailing edge.
But that's so cool.
Right?
I think what's probably really cool about that is I doubt everybody is asking her about that book and to talk about that book. And that's one of the books I haven't read from her. I would love to listen to her talk about that, her life and her family.
So good. What's your favorite food, which we've covered, but I want to hear it again.
Oh, I don't know what I told you, but
radish and Persian. That's what I heard.
Okay, I'll say radishes, Persian food, mostly tahdig, which is the rice dish, and fresh bread and butter.
I'm with you.
Yeah, fresh sourdough bread.
Vermont, salted.
So good.
Oh my gosh. Do you have a favorite local bakery?
So I bake my own sourdough bread.
Oh, your house. I'm definitely coming over.
My house.
I love how we don't get quite to the part about giving me your address.
I'm like, everybody can have my address.
Over, but what's your favorite animal?
Oh, probably a calf. I've always been like fascinated by cows, and calves are like just the cutest, most beautiful animals.
What's your favorite characteristic of them?
Oh, their nose and their ears. They're just so cute. I've like spent my whole life wanting to be around calves and never really found my way to them.
Yeah, certainly not while you're running around the world filming, but a day may come. What's your favorite holiday?
Has been and always will be Valentine's Day. I am such a sucker for love, and I know that it's like a contrived holiday, but I've always loved it ever since I was a young kid. It's my favorite day.
How do you celebrate it?
So when I was a kid, and even now, I used to have like baking parties for all of my friends. So I would have everybody over and I would bake a bunch of treats. I actually just did that again this year. My mom and I have like always given each other like little cards or presents. It just feels like past the romantic relationship thing. It feels like such a great time to remind the people that are close to you that you love them. And I love that.
That's so fun. What did you bake this year?
Oh, I made this really amazing like double-decker like strawberries and cream cake. And then I also make my favorite and famous brown butter buttermilk cake.
Whoa.
I'll give you the recipe. It's really good.
Forget the recipe. I want that address. Okay. How do you take care of yourself so you can keep going?
Taking walks alone with my dog.
What on your farm or about your land brings you the most joy or delight?
Well, because I just moved somewhere new, what's brought me so much joy is like just learning about it and looking around and discovering everything that's growing there. So many plants and trees and birds and space. I've never experienced some of these things before, but there are certainly plants and trees and birds that are new to me. And before I even plant anything, just spending time like being with the land.
That permaculture principle, right?
Yeah, which is new for me. I mean, this is the first time I've ever owned land, and also since college I've moved around so much. So really making a point to learn about the place that I am and get familiar with it before I try to produce something out of it or change it. That's been really cool and special.
I think you're talking about the respect that makes any relationship flourish. And as we learn to do that with land and with our food and with each other, I think we may be on to something.
Yeah.
Chiara, thanks so much for being here, sharing your life, your story, your stories, and curating them so that others of us can know and understand the significance of the lives and work of these women that you're showcasing. It's a joy to learn about them. It's really a joy to learn about you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Karen.
Women, Land, and Food is a Sister Camp production. Our producers are Elizabeth Brightly and Christina Samuelewski. Our studio engineer is John Toda, and we recorded at his studio, Syntax in Motion, and at Star Farm Studio, both in Burlington, Vermont. Our audio engineer is Bridger Dunnigan. Our lead for ads, sponsors, and partnerships is Georgie Rubens. Our 2025 summer intern is Marin Warshay, and our research assistant is Phoebe Woodall. Our music composer is Mike Coulter, who shared variations on his original piece called Seeing from his Confidence Head studio in Santa Monica, California. Land is our middle name, and our journey together follows our connection to land through food that grounds us and sources our lives. We take seriously that our Vermont stories are lived on the unceded tribal home of the Abenaki people. Our home on this edge of Lake Champlain is known to be an ancient place of gathering and exchange that was stewarded for thousands of years by generations of Abenaki before our European ancestors broke their connection to their lives on this land. We are working to understand the results of this oppression that we have inherited and to participate in all we can restore. We encourage you, too, on your journey to discover and restore your own varied and complex connections to your land and heritage.